back in those days, I was always searching for this balance between the various aspects of my life. And I think the gospel is a really good framework to be able to help me achieve that. So if you're sort of looking for life balance, which doesn't exist, by the way, this is probably, the gospel is probably a good place to start, because it helps you to prioritize your life to those things that are most important, that will leave a legacy, not, even after you die, but it gives you hope that there's something that's better after this life as well.
Welcome back, everyone, to Saints Unscripted. Today we have with us a very special guest hailing from Adelaide, Australia. We have Casper Yao with us. Casper, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to hear a little bit about your conversion story today. It's probably one unlike any we've had on the show before. But I'll let you kind of explain. We'll get into that when we get into it. But maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about maybe your family, if that's okay, and how life is going for you so far.
Sure. Great. My name is Casper Yao. As David said, I'm in Adelaide, Australia. I'm married to Tina, and we have 4 children ranging from 14 to 20. All still living at home. Originally, I migrated to Adelaide from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. That's where I was born. So I'm Malaysian, but of Chinese descent. So we were about fifth generation Malaysian Chinese. So we came here in 1982, and I now work at the University of Adelaide as a technology business analyst. And yeah, life's pretty good. Calling in the church. I'm a bishop at the moment, been a bishop for about a year and a half. Loving it. And that is I.
Well, good to meet you. Good to meet you, Casper. So coming from Malaysia, I can't imagine Christianity is too popular there. You weren't born into the church. Were you of
No.
Of an Eastern religion at that time?
Yeah, it's a bit of a melting pot. So I actually went to a Catholic primary school.
Okay.
So there is a fair bit of Christianity there, but the predominant religion there is Islam or Muslim. Muslim. So it's a real melting pot. There's Hinduism, a lot of Indians, there are a lot of Chinese. So it's all sorts down there. Turns out I ended up going back there on my mission.
Really?
Yeah.
So, your family in Malaysia and growing up, what religion were you?
So we were Buddhists. Right from the get-go, we went to temples, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So this is a kind of a unique story for our channel. How do you get from Buddhism to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? When were you introduced to the church?
So first ever connection with the church was through a school friend. And so I would have been probably 15 or 16. And this was one of those guys that you hate, right? He did everything well. He played, he was a really good basketballer, and he was, he did really well at school. As it turns out, he's now a heart surgeon. So, kind of carried on from there. But one of the things that struck me back in those days was how polite and respectful he was, even though I was the new boy in the school and really wasn't one of the popular kids or anything like that. I wasn't good at study, wasn't good at sport, and he was. But yeah, that struck me. But I really didn't look into the church. All I knew was he went away for a couple of years after school and never saw him for 2 years, and then he popped up again when he got back.
When was the first time you went to church?
So this guy here brought me into church basketball.
Aha, there it is.
So yeah, so about 3/4 of the team was from high school who weren't members of the church. So that was my first. Sort of. I never went to church during those days at all. Was we weren't practicing Buddhist. We sort of went with the traditions. And I have a great auntie who's lived with us ever since my sister was born. And we had the altar and all that sort of stuff. And so we sort of did it, but we sort of didn't. It was just kind of like hanging a cross on your wall and that sort of thing. So we weren't hardcore. We were just by tradition. We were Buddhists.
And so it was through this friend that your interest in the church was kind of piqued. Is that right?
Nope.
Oh,
nope.
Well, okay, so when do you start becoming interested in?
So you sort of fast forward a couple of years, and I'm out of high school. I'm at university, and my dad's business goes belly up. We have everything taken away from us: house, car, everything. And so it was a pretty difficult time in my life, and I ended up working in a factory. So I was at work, and I think one day and came home, and Mum said that some missionaries had dropped by from the church, and it's from the Mormon church, and all I knew about the Mormon church was my friend, but still thought it was a cult.
Yep, there it is.
And because at that time I was actually attending a local church, and it was a uniting church. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Sort of like
a Christian denomination.
Yeah, and I got some opinions from there as well. And but anyway, just to cut a long story short, my mom and my sister, they came knocking on the door one rainy day, and it was raining outside, and they took pity on them and
On the missionaries.
let them into the house and for a drink. And little did they know that their car was like parked two houses down. and they took the lessons. They were called discussions back then. There were like 5 or 6 booklets, and very soon after that, they decided to be baptized. And I was pretty, surprised. I wasn't upset, or like it didn't really worry me too much. I did, sort of mention the cult word a couple of times, and just from what I've heard. And then my dad joined the church, which really surprised me. Probably about 2 or 3 months after, I think. I didn't want it to have anything to do with it. So I kind of thought I'd lose friends, and so I had my circle of friends. I thought I'd lose them and all that sort of stuff. All the normal fears you would have. And it took me quite a little while. So between me joining the church, I got dragged to church from time to time, and to firesides and stuff like that. So I went through a whole bunch of missionaries. Like, I can't remember how many companionships I went through, but there were lots of them. They all, he gave this prodigal son a shot to see whether they can break him, and weren't real successful. And in the meantime, I'm playing basketball on P days with the missionaries, so I'm getting to know quite a few of these guys. I really like them, and I thought they were really cool. And then one Sunday, they took me to a fireside, and I sat sort of in front of where the chorister would be. And this young lady that was choristering. I was looking at her going, wow. I just had that feeling going, well, if you to deserve something like that, you're going to have to do something about it. And started then from then on, I started to take the lessons a little bit more seriously, and keep the commitments and do a little bit of reading and a bit of praying and stuff like that. And and when they taught me about the plan of salvation, that's really what sort of hit home for me. That really resonated with me big time. And, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't so much at the beginning, it wasn't Book of Mormon, it wasn't Joseph Smith, it was actually the plan of salvation, because it just made sense to me.
Mm. Is there a specific part that really resonated with you, or just the whole thing in general?
Just the whole thing in general, just to sort of the end-to-end, story, if you like.
Yeah.
It sort of answers a lot of questions around, our God is a fair God. He gives everybody a chance. There's repentance. It's not a heaven or hell type situation, right? It's not black and white. And that, I thought, yep, that works for me. And
it's a biggie for me too.
Yeah. And so one Sunday, very soon after that, went to church, went to sacrament. Went to church, and then on the way home, I was driving home with Mom, and sort of casually said to her, "Hey, Mom, getting baptized next week. Hope you can make it." And I think we almost had a car crash because she was driving.
Oh, wow.
So incidentally, that girl that I saw who was chorusing, I'm still friends with her. She still doesn't know it was her.
Well, she might after this episode publishes.
Well, I don't think she will, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, so I got baptized and ended up then very soon after that decided to serve a mission and ended up in the Singapore mission. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
So, how long after your family was baptized did you get baptized?
About 2 years. So it was quite a long time.
Did they pressure you at all during those 2 years?
Nope.
I mean, you mentioned they took you to some firesides and whatnot,
yeah.
but they didn't want to force you into anything.
Not really. No, they always invited me to church, and probably 80% of the time I said, "Nah, I've got better things to do." In the meantime, I'm trying to reconcile my life. And when I started taking it seriously, I'm trying to go, okay, how's this going to work going down the track with my friends and the people I know now? And it's funny that my high school friends are still, caught up with a bunch of them. We would catch up every couple of months. They're still my friends, and so, after that initial storm, we go, "Oh, Casper's getting baptized into the Mormon church." Everything kind of settled, and everything, they realized that I hadn't changed. I'm still the same guy, still goofy and, uncoordinated and all that sort of stuff. And so.
Do they think you're in a cult?
No, I don't think so. My school friends weren't actually religious, so it didn't matter to them. And they knew the other guy, the one that I played basketball with. They all played in his team, most these guys. So they knew he was a good guy. So no, not really. Didn't get a lot of. I didn't run into a lot of to be honest with you. My parents did when they first decided to join the church. So I was really fortunate in that I wasn't one of those that had to ask the parents for permission to be baptized and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I never ran into that. And, and very soon after I joined church, I left on my mission. And
how did you come to that decision? Because I mean, that's not a decision that is easy for a lot of people to make, especially if you were Buddhist and then you were kind of looking into some other Christian churches and then you decided to join our church. And how long after you were baptized did you serve your mission?
Exactly a year, almost exactly a year.
See, that year goes by quick. How did you make such a tough decision so quickly?
I think it was the example of the missionaries, which who I hung out with a fair bit. And I looked at these guys and go, man, they've got it together, and they're not really like into themselves or anything like that. They're pretty humble, but they're really good at what they do. Some of these guys were amazing my gauge was back in those days was sports, right? And these guys were amazing athletes. Some of these guys that I played with, and they were intelligent. I sort of aspired to be like them. So part of that journey was becoming, to serve a mission. Plus, I'm one of those guys that if I watch a good movie, I want to tell everybody. And so it was almost a natural course of action for me.
Yeah.
Funny story. I went back, and obviously going back to where I used to live, I still have a lot of relatives back there. So I ended up back in Kuala Lumpur, and so Asian, what are you doing wasting your time 2 years and not even getting paid? This is my grandfather who was still alive back then. And he's pretty wealthy. So when we're moving apartments, he offers to send his chauffeur to carry all the furniture and stuff like that. No, granddad, that's not how it works. And so we ended up teaching one of people that worked for him, and she joined the church, which was interesting. Didn't have any success with my relatives though.
So how was your mission overall? Was it what you expected? Was it tougher than you thought it would be?
It was a little bit of both. It was familiar territory. I spoke the language. I spoke a couple of languages. So I speak Cantonese, I speak Malay, Bahasa. So for me to get around a little bit, it was easy. And, it was an interesting mission because it's called the Singapore mission, but back in those days, it covered Malaysia, which included Borneo, included Indonesia. India had just split off into its own mission. Pakistan was in that mission.
Wow.
Sri Lanka was in that mission. So we were just sort of country hopping most of the time because we're on limited visas and stuff like that. Only the guys that worked in Singapore had work visas.
Mm-hmm.
So we wore pastel shirts. We never wore a tie. Didn't have badges because predominantly they're Muslim countries. So, we didn't go there. So it was pretty interesting.
So now it's
not your normal mission.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been what was the year you said? How many years?
92. So 92, I joined the church.
Okay.
So that makes it.
I was born in 91, so.
All right. So I think 29 years. I think.
Okay.
Is that right? Is that about right?
Yeah, that's
I think.
Close enough. I'm not a numbers guy, but yeah, about 29 years. So now you're a bishop.
Yeah, I am.
And how are things going for you in the church nowadays? I'm sure you've learned a lot since 1992, and as a bishop, what you're doing as a member of the church is a lot more involved probably than any other you had. How's it going?
Yeah, good. So prior to being bishop, I was 8.5 years in the stake presidency.
Wow.
So he's kind of saw all sorts of stuff. The no leader is perfect.
Yeah.
And I see time and time again people getting offended by church leaders, and and they don't realize that these are just human beings. They put them on a pedestal and they get disappointed because they don't do something, or they've done something that wasn't quite quite right in their eyes, and all that sort of stuff, and they leave church or have a chip on their shoulder right throughout their church lives. The sub prevents them feeling the Spirit, and eventually that wears on them, and has consequences for them personally. So yeah, I see a lot of that. But I still love I love church, and I love obviously love the Savior for his example, and he's the only perfect being I can look to actually go, okay, I'm never going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
It gives me a framework to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, and gives me context. Just about everything that happens to me, I can sort of put it in somewhere. I can hang this off somewhere and it makes sense, in that sort of gospel lens. which is why I love the gospel. It works for me.
Yeah. So I've got two questions for you. The first question is, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts? Is there anything you'd like to share that you haven't gotten out yet?
It's a cycle. You go through the pride cycle as a church member. There are times when you're like, you're all the way up there and you're almost perfect, you think. But then there's other times where you're sort of like, you haven't read your scriptures for weeks or something like that. So, that's normal. And, I think self-awareness is really, really important. And to be able to acknowledge that you haven't done those things and you probably should, and just go ahead and just get it done. But don't be too hard on yourself, because that's what repentance is for. I really like the sort of, how repentance is now. I think we have the true definition of repentance, which is change, as opposed to being linked to digging yourself out of sin and, all that sort of stuff. That is so important for people to understand. And, a lot of times people move away from the church because they feel bad about themselves and about the stuff that they don't think they can come back from it. I don't think there'll hardly be anybody where that's coming back to church is not possible if they just make that decision.
Yeah.
The other thing is, for those who sort of have found things, discovered things on the internet about church, it's a little bit like deciding you're going to buy a red car. You're going to find red cars. You're going to notice red cars all over the place. It's really about intent. If you want to know that the church is true, you'll find evidence that the church is true. But if your intent is to find stuff about the church that proves that it's not true, you'll find that too. So I think it's a matter of choosing to believe. And, I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, it's kind of what faith is all about at the end of the day. If you're
absolutely,
if you're academically or intellectually forced to choose one side or the other, then it's not exactly faith. I don't think being forced to make a choice isn't really faith. But wise words. I appreciate that. And my last question for you is, there are a lot of people out there that right now are perhaps in the mindset about the church that you were in back in 1991, where they look at it, maybe they don't pay much attention to it, maybe they think it's a bit culty. What would you say to your 1991 self if you had the opportunity?
I think I mentioned just now that, religion in general is a framework of sorts that sort of helps you to view the world a certain way. And if, you could pick one off the shelf that's sort of ready made and you can sort of use that, or you can make one up yourself. And it's really hard to actually make one up yourself. That sort of covers everything. So I've been exposed to Buddhism, obviously being brought up in it. I love the Buddhist philosophy. And in fact, I love the philosophy of most religions. There's sort of a common thread of being a good person.
Yeah. And loving others.
Yeah. Yeah. So of all the religions I've ever come across, I chose the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because it gave me, like I said, a framework to live my life, and gives you, everything that, because we've got so much information coming in at the moment through the net and all that sort of stuff. It sort of gives you somewhere to sort of hang information on and to filter out the stuff that doesn't make sense according to the gospel. And so I think that gives me a peace of mind. I don't get information overload because through the gospel, I can decide what to lead out and what to bring into my life. And people tend to separate religion from the rest of your life, but actually religion for me, the gospel is the overarching framework, and everything, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, intellectual, all those sorts of things sort of fall under that banner of spiritual. Back in those days, I was always searching for this balance between the various aspects of my life, and I think the gospel is a really good framework to be able to help me achieve that. So if you're sort of looking for life balance, which doesn't exist, by the way, this is probably, the gospel is probably a good place to start, because it helps you to prioritize your life to those things that are really, that are most important, that will leave a legacy, not, even after you die, but it gives you hope that there's something that's better after this life as well. So I used to be afraid of death, right? And after I joined the church and embraced the gospel in my life, doesn't matter anymore.
Give you a different perspective, a different paradigm.
Absolutely.
I really like what you said about how our religion isn't something that you just kind of check at the door, I always think when talking about this, I always think about how sometimes at sporting events, people kind of leave their beliefs and their ethics at the door. And in sporting events, as fans, anything goes, and you can, shout obscenities at the fans of the other team, and it's all just fine. And then once you walk out those doors, then you bring your religion back into your life, like flipping a switch almost. But I love what you're saying. Like that's not something that, at least that's not something we should be doing as Latter-day Saints or as Christians in general. Our faith should be permeating every aspect of our lives, as you mentioned. Anyways,
yeah.
Casper, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a good chat. It doesn't feel like an interview. It just feels like a chat. I really enjoyed that.
I prefer chats over interviews. Thank you so much for joining us. If people have questions for you, how can they contact you? Can they leave comments in the comment section? Would that be?
Yeah, probably just to start with. I think that's probably the best way. Happy to answer any questions. I have some social media channels, like in terms of Facebook and stuff like that. So if people want to look me up, they can do that. Happy to connect up for sure.
Sounds good. All right, Casper. Well, I hope you have a great day. Tell your family hi for us, and thanks for all the work you're doing in the church.
Will do. Thank you very much. Really a pleasure.